So, you want to catch them all, but do you have what it takes? Gen 5, to catch them all, takes a long time. It's going to take me a long time to talk through this entire thing, so I would suggest buckling up because this is going to last a while. So, before I get into exactly what's required to do all of this, I'll go ahead and basically give a little backstory on why I think that this is, an interesting thing to do. So, starting from the beginning, whenever Black and White were coming out, I was really into Pokemon, and I had just played Soul Silver, and I dumped hundreds of hours into that game. And so I really hoped that Black and White would be really good, right? And I ended up getting both of them. I did the same thing for Heart Gold and Soul Silver. The reason being, basically, I was hoping that my brother would play the other one alongside me. And that had worked for Heart Gold and Soul Silver because early on in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, my brother started playing Heart Gold. I played Soul Silver. And those are both great games, pretty universally acclaimed. But anyways, I tried to do the same thing with Black and White, but my brother didn't end up actually playing the other one. So basically, I just had to try to play alongside some of my friends that were playing it at the same time. But yeah. After I beat White, which was the first one I played, I did try to play Black because I wanted to play through both of them and see any differences. I did kind of burn out, though, because there wasn't anybody really playing alongside me at the time. But it was interesting. I'm not exactly sure why I burnt out. There was also a lot of negativity in the whole community about the Gen 5 games at that point, because I think everybody was so hyped up about all the Gen 4 games that the expectations were a little too high. But in hindsight, pretty much everybody likes Generation 5. So, I don't know. I just think that it's kind of worn off a little over time, the hate for Gen 5. But yeah, I never ended up finishing Pokemon Black. I think I played through about the 8th gym. And then after that, I skipped out actually completely on Black and White 2. And after Pokemon X had been out for a while, I eventually picked up X, and I enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed playing through Alpha Sapphire and Pokemon Sun to a certain extent, but none of them were ever really all that fun, and I, like many others, basically played through the very start of the Ultra Sun and Moon games before stopping on the first island because I just got sick of basically all of the hand-holdiness at the very beginning. So I still have yet to finish any of those games. I think that's true of a lot of people, honestly. I mean, PokeTubers probably ended up finishing them just because, but I think there were a lot of people that didn't even like those anyways. Point is that basically around this time, I wanted to try to go back and, relive the Gen 4 games, which were my favorites. So around this time, I saw a few videos that were of this sort of variety by Jrose. So shoutouts to Jrose. He has done videos on how to catch them all for generations 1 through 4. The one that particularly intrigued me was Generation 4 because I was going to go back and play those games anyways. And so I ended up actually following that guide basically and doing that. And it was a lot of fun. Even though it took quite a while to do. So I pretty much immediately after that decided that I was going to try to do this for the Gen 5 games. I did actually, between, I believe, Pokemon X and Alpha Sapphire, go back and play Black 2, because I was a little bit into, like, some low-level competitive stuff in Pokemon X, right? So I wanted to be able to get some of the legends with good abilities and IVs if I wanted to from Black 2. So anyways, I had played those, or just Black 2 really, and it was good. So I figured that I would try to do this, but for Black 2 and White 2. So, anyways, that's basically the gist of this, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So, I guess backstory over. I'm sorry if I bored you for 5 minutes, but we can get into the actual interesting stuff now. So, the first thing here is that we're probably going to want to deal with the regional decks first, right? So how do you catch them all in Gen 5 for the regional decks? You're going to want to pick either Black and White, or Black 2 and White 2. If you want to do this, I would very much recommend Black 2 and White 2, just because they have a lot more post-game mods in them. So basically with Black and White, they had the entire part of the game before the post-game. The only Pokemon that were catchable were the new Unova Pokemon. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, from what I remember, that that was the case. I haven't played those games in a long time. Yeah, so basically it's a lot easier to get way more Pokemon in Black 2 and White 2. And the other reason you want to basically pick the same set is because you're not going to be satisfied, really, if you play half of one set and half the other. Like, okay, so let's put it this way. Pokemon Black 2 and Black have the same exclusive Unova Pokemon, and the same goes for Pokemon White 2 and Pokemon White. So, if you play both of those through to completion, right, then you end up getting all of the normal exclusives the same. The problem is that, and I have a list of this stuff here that I'll probably show up on screen whenever I'm editing through this. If you want to complete the regional decks in Black 2 and White 2, and you play like Black 2 and White, then you're going to be missing one of the Elekid and Magby lines, one of the Skitty and Baniri lines, and one of the Swank and Numel lines, and then either Tornadus or Thundurus and Landorus. Like, you'll be able to catch one of those roaming in the original Black and White game that you played, but you won't be able to catch the other one in the sequels, because for some reason they didn't decide to put them in the sequels. It is worth noting that if you play White, there's this thing called White Forest. It's pretty complicated to deal with, and I won't try to explain it super hard here, but you could catch the Magby and Elekid lines in White, but it's kind of chance-based, because you're not guaranteed, even if you beat the game in a day, you're not guaranteed to be able to get those from White Forest. But if you really want to learn about that, I would recommend looking up a guide on that, because I'm not really qualified to talk too hard on it. But yeah, even then, though, you'd still be missing some Pokemon in the sequels. So, and the other thing is, if you wanted to complete the regional decks in the original games, you're still going to be missing the other of Thundurus and Tornadus, and also Landorus, right? So, basically what I ended up doing was I went with Black 2 and White 2, because I think those are just really, I think they're better games. I mean, I know the story is different and not necessarily better, but I think they're better games overall. They have some improvements, and also they have more Pokemon. And I was shooting for the national decks, so that was going to make it easier in the long run. Especially since there's some exclusive national dex Pokemon that you don't only get in Black 2 or White 2, right? So if you only play one of them, you won't be able to get all of the extra national dex Pokemon that Black and White don't have, if that makes any sense. But anyways, I'll go ahead and note, if you want to do Black and White and just complete the regional decks, it's super easy. All you have to do is beat each game to completion and then catch the roaming legendary after the Elite Four, right? And then catch any exclusive Pokemon, trade them over into the hub game, and in your hub game, like the main one that you're playing, you just catch all of the other Pokemon that you can get, right? And then you pretty easily complete the regional decks. There shouldn't be any problems with that. However, in black 2 and white 2, I'd like to say it's just as easy because it's basically the exact same. You just play through one, or not one, you play through both one complete time, right? And you catch all the exclusives in the second one and the other box legend, right? And then you trade them over. So, but see, the problem is that Game Freak decided they weren't going to put Thundurus, Tornadus, and Landorus into the sequel games, right? And so what you end up having to do is either you're going to have to go back and play black and white, both of them, which is horrible, right? Or what you have to do is you have to play Dream Radar, which really isn't that great. But, you know, it's doable. It just takes like a week. Because, unfortunately, it takes a long time for basically between the things that you do trying to get enough orbs to progress through the storyline, right? So that you can catch the Landorus and Thundurus and Tornadus and whatnot, right? You have to wait in between. And it's like a couple hours, I think, every time. And it's kind of annoying to try to keep up and play every couple hours. Now, what you can do is you can spend 5 play coins to refill, like, all the clouds before, like, they fill up naturally, right? But the problem with that is that you can only do it 3 times a day, and it requires 5 play coins, and I'm not gonna sit there and shake my 3DS for that long. So anyways, it's a pain in the butt, but if you just keep at it and do it every day, then eventually you get all of those, and they're done, and basically you'll have finished your regional decks. Now, I didn't mention yet, so I hope nobody has started and is trying to do all of this through this point. You are going to have to get the 3rd starter at some point, and it takes like an hour to do that, because you have to go through the first gem before you can trade with the Sea Gear, right? So you have to play for an hour with the 3rd starter, and then trade it over. And I would recommend doing that before you play through the other games. So, like, I used Black 2 as my hub game. So before I would play through White 2, then I would basically play through an hour of White 2 with, like, Tepig, if I'm going to pick Snivy, and I picked Oshawott in Black 2. Then I would play through an hour with Tepig, and then trade it over, and then start the actual playthrough of White 2, right? The other thing you want to do, and this is for later, really, is you need to make sure you pick the other fossil, because you get the fossils in the post-game. I figured people would have common sense on this type of thing, but in case you forget, I mean, you can pick either one in both games, and you can fix it by doing some Interlink stuff to try to get more of, like, the fossils in each game. There's, like, one of them is specifically for Black 2 through Interlink missions, and the other is specifically for White 2. And you can get them that way, but I would just recommend choosing the right ones the first time. But anyways, if you do all of that, then you end up with every regional dex Pokemon, right? Just not that bad. The only problem is the Dream Radar thing. The good thing about Dream Radar is that there's a bunch of Pokemon that are rare that I'll probably show up on screen around now, that you can get, like, probably more easily if you get lucky with Dream Radar. Like, so, for example, Riolu is, like, 5% in Flossessi Ranch, right? That's kind of annoying to deal with, but it's available right from the start in Dream Radar if you happen to get lucky and get one, right? And there's a bunch of stuff like that. I'll list all the ones that are in the regional decks, and the percentages that they show up at in-game, just so that you can kind of gauge which ones would be good to get. But there's several that are, you know, below 10%, where it's nice to be able to get them through Dream Radar. So it is a plus. It's kind of mitigates the annoyingness of having to go through Dream Radar. Dream Radar is also useful for some stuff later, as we'll see when we're discussing the national decks. But yeah, I think I mentioned everything with regards to the regional decks. Yeah, that looks to be it. So, the next thing is the national decks. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can get some Pokemon in Black 2 and White 2 specifically, right? So that you don't have to get them from other games. You can get them from other games and migrate them, but they're perfectly easy to get within Black 2 and White 2. And so I'm going to list some of these methods that you can use to get them. So there's fishing, which for some reason they locked the Super Rod into the post game. I can't remember quite where you get it from. It's like the southeast of the region, I think. And anyways, basically in every route now, there's like some set of fishing Pokemon, and you can use your habitat list to figure this out pretty easily. But you could basically go back to all the routes and fish and try to fill out those habitat lists. There's a bunch of Pokemon that you can get this way, and a lot of them are national dex Pokemon, really. Just because the fishing rod is behind the national dex, so it's behind the Elite Four, right? So they figured might not be a bad idea to put national dex Pokemon for fishing, I guess. I don't understand why they locked the fishing rod so far away, but they did. So it's a thing. All the new areas, there are a lot of Pokemon that you can just encounter in grass or shaking grass normally in the new routes. There's a bunch of them. But those are pretty easy to figure out just using the habitat list. Then you have the swarms. There's pretty much a swarm for every single route. There's some that are exclusive for Black 2 and White 2. I'll try to show them on screen if I remember. But basically, if you're smart about it and you're using both games at the same time, right, you can get pretty much all of the swarm Pokemon within a few hours, so it's not that bad. Like I said, there are a few of them that are exclusive, so you have to be using both games post the Elite Four. Anyways, the best way to do this basically is to set the time to 11:59 p.m., start up the game, and then basically be standing outside of one of those little tunnels between routes so that you can go in and check to see what's swarming. And it'll update at 12:01. I'm not sure why it's not midnight specifically, but it's 12:01. And since the game, its internal clock is not passing over that time, you have to actually start up the game and have it go over the time and then save afterwards, whether or not it's something that you want. Obviously, if it's something you want, you should go get it and then save and then do the process over again until you get everything. And while you're doing this, there's also all of the fossils. There's a daily event in Twist Mountain where some guy will basically give you a fossil, like a random fossil, and you can get all of the non-Unova fossils this way, and it's really easy. And if you're smart about it and do this while you're doing swarms, you should get these all long before you finish all the swarms. See, the next thing is there's a bunch of in-game trades related to the dropped item quest, I believe is what it's called. If you look up dropped item quest on Cerebi, it'll show up. There's a good guide on it that I highly recommend, because I am not going to be able to detail exactly all of how it works, but basically the idea is you pick up an X transceiver, and then there's like 10 calls where you have to go to specific locations on certain routes. It's like 1 square on each of these routes, so you really need a guide. Otherwise, you're not going to get them in normal play. But yeah, so you essentially do 10 calls that way, and then after that you do 20 calls from like the same routes, but not the specific squares, and it's like random whether or not it'll be that route specifically that they want you to call from. But after you do that 20 times, and you get up to 30 total calls, right, what ends up happening is you can call them every day, and they'll trade you a Pokemon. And so both Yancey and Curtis, who are the NPCs involved with this, and this is why you need to play the main playthroughs of Black 2 and White 2 as opposite genders, because the two give different Pokemon, actually. Like, I think it's 4 each that are different. I guess Shellos technically shouldn't be counted in that total, but they give the different forms, so it's kind of like a different Pokemon, I guess, but not really. I mean, you only need 1 to count it as the species. Anyways, I'll list the Pokemon on screen that basically you can get by trading to them. They each trade 12. And yeah, once you get all those, I think pretty much all of those are unobtainable elsewhere. There might be a couple. I don't quite remember. But yeah, it's definitely worth doing. It'll cut out a lot of time and make it easier in terms of the games that you have to own. Like, there's some that if you don't get them through Yancey or Curtis, then you're gonna have to play specifically either Heart Gold or Soul Silver, which is obviously gonna put some restrictions on you, and that's kind of a pain. So I would just plan on making sure that you do 1 playthrough as each gender, basically. Right. Okay, so once you've done all of that, there's a few more in-game trades that are just scattered about. So there's a Rotom, there's an Ambipom, and there's an Alakazam. I believe the Alakazam is the second trade with the same NPC. And so you can get all of those that way, and that unlocks their respective lines if you breed them. There's a bunch of legendaries, of course, that are from previous generations that made it back into the game. You got all the Regis. Now, 2 of the Regis are game exclusive. Those being Registeel for Black 2 and Regice for White 2. Right? And if you have all 3 of them, then you can go to somewhere in Twist Mountain and basically get Regigigas. Right? And the thing is, I guess this is a good time to mention the key system. So, whenever you beat the Elite Four, you unlock like some difficulty keys. Whenever you catch Regirock in each specific game, you unlock a key that basically allows you to change the chamber into the chamber of either Registeel or Regice, depending on the game, right? And there's the same thing with like which city you have, right? So like for Black City and White Forest, right? You can basically unlock a key that will allow you to switch between those two. And what you need to do is, once you get all the keys, you basically want to take your Black 2 and your White 2 and exchange the keys. And then basically, you can use that, like, so let's put it this way. You don't actually have to catch Regice in White 2. You just have to catch Regirock. And then you send over the key for the Ice Chamber to Black 2, right? And then you can catch Regice in Black 2 by using the key to change the chamber into the Regice chamber. So it's like, it's technically exclusive because you need both games to basically be able to catch Regice at that point, right? But you can catch it in Black 2. I don't know. But you can do the same thing with Black City and White Forest. White Forest allows you to get like a lot of evolutionary items for really cheap. Black City gives other evolutionary items, but they're really expensive. But I'll get to those a little later. Anyways, the other post-game legendaries that I haven't mentioned. So Latios is exclusive to Black 2. Latias is exclusive to White 2. These are actually exclusive. There's no keys involved with these. You have to actually catch each one in each game. Now, if you're careful about which of Heart Gold or Soul Silver that you're going to end up playing, because you basically have to play one of those, which I'll get to in a bit, then you can pick the right one such that you get the other Lati. So if you really didn't want to catch Latias in White 2, you could play, like, I think it's Soul Silver that has Latias. I could be wrong on that. But it's just pretty easy to just catch it in White 2. It's not that hard. It's in Dreamyard. Anyways, the other ones that are available in both games are the Lake Trio, so Mesprit, Azelf, Uxie, and then Cresselia, which I believe, I don't remember where you get the Lunar Wing, but you have to go to the Marvelous Bridge, I think. and it'll end up showing there if you have the lunar ring. I think the lunar ring is from that mansion over by Reversal Mountain. And then the final post-game legendary you can get is Heatran, right? Okay, so back to the stuff about Black City and White Forest. So I was talking about the evolutionary items. So those are important and nice to have. You don't unlock the keys for them until you beat the 5th level. There's 10 levels to each one. So you have, well, I guess I should be more specific. So in Black City, there's Black Tower. And in White City, there's White Tree Hollow. And basically, these are like randomly generated dungeons where you have to like find and beat specific trainers in order to advance through the level. And it takes a long time to do these. Not necessarily the early ones, but like the last 5 floors. There's multiple floors per thing, and it gets really complicated and I mean, if you're really lucky, it can go really fast, but most of the time it's going to take forever. And the levels get pretty high in some of these. Anyways, the point is that what I did, for example, is I went all the way through Black Tower, did all 10 floors, and beat Banga at the end, right? And essentially, by beating all 10 floors, you unlock all of the viable evolutionary items, right? And then I beat through floor 5, I think, in White Tree Hollow. And then I transferred over the White City key to Black 2, right? And then beat all of the floors in White Tree Hollow in Black 2 because my team was more leveled there, right? So it was going to be easier to do. And then I was able to get all of the evolutionary items that you can get from White Forest. And so basically how it works is every day you can buy one of the specific evolutionary items, and I think it switches either every day or every 2 days. So like White Forest will have some stuff like water stones and mostly normal elemental stones, and then some King's Rocks and stuff like that. And Black City will sell for ridiculous prices, Dusk Stones, and I think Dawn Stones, or Shiny Stones, or something like that. Electrizers, Magmarizers. I could be wrong on specific ones of those I'm listing, but it sells some of those. So there's a lot of good evolutionary items that you can get, and basically you pretty much need to beat these because you're not going to have anywhere near enough water stones. Like, that's the thing I believe I ran out of the fastest, and I was starting to run out of fire stones and leaf stones towards the end. But those are important to make sure you get enough of. So you really, well, it's not necessary to beat these. It is useful. The other thing is that in the respective game, so like if you send over the White Forest key to Black 2 and beat all the way through, you're not going to unlock the gift Pokemon. But in White 2, if you do it, you will. So in Black 2, if you beat all of the 10 levels of Black Tower, you get a shiny Gibble, which is a pretty nice reward, honestly. And in White 2, you get a shiny Dratini. But the reason that it's probably better to use Black 2 as the hub game is that technically, not technically, actually, you can get the Dratini line in the wild over by Dragon Spiral Tower, I believe, from fishing spots, basically. Shaking spots, you fish in them. But in Black 2, and White 2, there's no way to get the Garchomp line, right? So having the shiny Gibble is really nice because you can breed it, and then basically use those breeded ones to get all of the Garchomp line, right? So anyways, the next thing is there's like a couple lines that are specifically an interlink. I actually would highly recommend doing this. I know it's only 2 lines, but these are really annoying lines to get because they're specifically the only place you can get these other than through these interlink missions is going to be in Diamond and Pearl, which means you have to play both of those, and one of them you have to play through like the 3rd gym, and one you'd have to play through like the 5th gym, basically, to get these. So what am I talking about? There's a couple Fun Fest missions that I think are something about searching in grottos, and basically you do the mission twice, and what ends up happening is that in some of these grottos in Black 2, if you do the mission, you'll get some Stunky, and in White 2, if you do the mission, you'll get some Glameow. Yeah, I think Glameow is the unevolved form. So there'll be some Glameow in the grottos, right? And those are unobtainable by any other method in Black 2 and White 2. But they're really annoying to get otherwise. And it's really not that bad. I mean, you don't actually have to be connected to Wi-Fi or anything to use Interlink. It's pretty easy to just do that. Let's see, the next place, there's only 2 more things, and then we'll get into all the other games you have to play. So the next 2 things. So there's the Nature Preserve, right, where there's a few Pokemon lines that you can get through Nature Preserve. The kind of cool thing is that you can get a shiny Haxorus. And basically, this unlocks once you've seen every Pokemon in the regional dex. You don't actually have to fill it out. Filling it out will get you an Oval Charm, which makes it so that eggs hatch, like, well, they don't hatch earlier, but basically eggs will pop up sooner. Like, you'll have to go fewer cycles before you get an egg randomly from the daycare man, right? Which is really nice, actually, for trying to, if you're going for a living dex especially, that's very nice. But yeah, so it's still, I mean, you're going to fill out the regional dex anyways, but you know, you don't actually have to fill it out and catch everything to go to the Nature Preserve. I just thought that was worth mentioning. You have to see everything. That does still mean that you're going to have to play both games, though, because it's not like Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum where you can see everything without having to actually trade anything. And the final thing is there's hidden grottos. There's some Pokemon that, okay, let's put it this way. Sometime in the game, you're introduced to this mechanic called hidden grottos, and throughout the game, there's these like little spots that are hard to notice, but there's a good guide on Cerebi showing where all of them are. But there's spots between trees that are hard to notice, and basically you can go in there, and there's a small chance that there's specific Pokemon in there, and there are some Pokemon that can only be gotten in Black 2 and White 2 through this method. I would recommend not even trying to bother with that, honestly. I mean, the odds are so low, and that basically there's like a 5% chance every cycle that you walk that it fills back up again. So you have to walk a long time to guarantee that it's gonna basically have something, and there's not that many of them, right? I mean, if there were like 20 of them and there weren't that many mons spread between them, right, then it wouldn't be all that bad. But the problem is there's the only ones that have exclusive Pokemon are ones in the post-game. I guess because they don't want you to get non-Unova Dex Pokemon before beating the Elite Four. So in the post-game routes, there will be some hidden grottos where you can get some of these Pokemon, but they're still low rates, and to get them all would be a total pain. And the other thing is that some of them are version exclusive too. And it's just, I don't know, you can get all of these Pokemon in Heart Gold or Soul Silver or Platinum. So I would just recommend doing that instead of trying to deal with these hidden grottos. So, alright.
This is where the fun begins.
Now we get to the last part, really. Which is basically everything you can't get in Black 2 and White 2. So I did mention the Landorus, Thundurus, and Tornadus trio. I don't remember what they're officially called. And you can get those through Dream Radar. But I mentioned those because they're in the regional decks. But everything else I mentioned, you could get in the game naturally. There are a few Pokemon that you can't get, or yeah, there are some Pokemon that you can't get in the main game that you can get through Dream Radar. There's also a few National Dex Pokemon that you can also get through Dream Radar. But basically, I'll go ahead and list these out. There are several of these that you end up getting through in-game trades. But there are a couple that are nice, and a couple that are pretty easy to get because you basically just put a special code in, and the Pokemon that are going to show up, I believe, are pretty much guaranteed to be the ones with the special code. But you don't really need to bother with any of these because the ones that you can't get in the main game are pretty easily catchable in some of the other games that you're going to end up having to play. But yeah, so even if you got literally all the Pokemon that I mentioned, right, and everything you can get between Dream Radar, aside from some of the box legends, everything that you can get in Dream Radar, and anything that you can feasibly at all get in Black 2 and White 2, right? You're still going to be missing 156 Pokemon, right? 13 of these are event Pokemon. I mean, I guess Hoenn isn't an event Pokemon, but it's considered mythical, right? But you're going to be missing all of those. You can get those via the DNS trick if you really want to, but they're not required for completing the National Dex. I'm not really going to go into how to catch all of those. But even then, you're still missing 143 Pokemon. That includes 56 Pokemon that are from Kanto lines, 24 Pokemon from Johto lines, 36 Pokemon from Hoenn lines, and 27 Pokemon from Sinnoh lines. Now, you might notice a lot of those are Kanto and Johto specific. That ends up being good, because probably the best game to play alongside Black 2 and White 2 is one of the Johto games. So you're going to want to play either Heart Gold or Soul Silver. And I'll get more into that in a minute. You have to realize, though, that we have all of Gen 3 and all of Gen 4. Like, this isn't like Gen 3 where you didn't have any connectivity to previous gens. Now there's like 5 different ways to get any of the remaining Pokemon, basically. There's very few that are exclusive to like 1 or 2 games. And basically, it just... there's a lot of options for how to deal with this. I'm going to go through a couple ways that you can deal with this. Basically, what's going to end up being feasibly required, and like what options you have based on what games you have, and then I'll basically go through what the fastest method is if you have everything, right? So I'll recommend, if you happen to own all the games, I'll recommend the best way to deal with this. But yeah, so I'm going to start off. There's the legendary dogs, so Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. You can technically get those in Fire Red, Leaf Green. I mean, if you have Coliseum, I don't remember which Coliseum game it is, that's not a terrible way to get them. But it's probably just going to be easiest to play one of Heart Gold or Soul Silver. I mean, it would be hell to play through Fire Red or Leaf Green 3 whole times with different starters just to get the dogs. I mean, that just sounds terrible. You'd have to play through part of the post game. So I would basically say, feasibly speaking, we pretty much have to assume we're going to play one of Heart Gold or Soul Silver. It doesn't really matter which one. I mean, it kind of matters, but we'll get into that in a second. So then you have the Hoenn box legends, right? And basically, you can either play the other Hoenn remake, or sorry, the other Johto remake. The Hoenn remake is Gen 6. The other Johto remake. So if, let's say you played Heart Gold, you would also play Soul Silver, because after Red, you can get one of the box legendaries, and then if you consolidate both of them to one game, you can use that to get the green orb, and then basically get Rayquaza, and then you can migrate all of those. That's one way of doing this. The other way would be to play one of the Hoenn games. So, like, okay, here are the 4 options, basically. If you play Heart Gold, you can play through Red, catch all the legends, and catch Kyogre. And then you play Ruby to get Groudon and Rayquaza. And then basically you migrate all of those, and you're good to go. You can play Soul Silver all the way through Red, catching all the legends, right? And then play Sapphire to catch Kyogre and Rayquaza, because in Soul Silver you get Groudon, right? And so those are ways, if you own the specific combination of games, that way can work. The most versatile way of doing this, and I think this is the fastest, would be to either play one of Heart Gold or Soul Silver, right? It doesn't matter which one, and then you play Emerald, and you catch all 3 of them. And what this ends up making it so that you can do is you don't actually have to beat Red, which is really nice, because it's kind of annoying to beat Red. You have to grind a bit on the Elite Four, probably to around level 60 before you can feasibly win. And that's with like tons of revives, and is not particularly easy if you have bad team composition. So, I mean, it's like several hours of grinding, really. But you still have to beat all the Kanto gyms. Oh, Kanto or Kanto, I don't know. But you have to beat all the Kanto gyms because there's certain legendaries that are only going to show up once you beat all the Kanto gyms. I believe Moltres is one of them, for example. I don't remember if Suicune is one of them. It might be. Anyways, you have to go basically to the same point, but you don't have to beat Red, which actually saves an underrated amount of time. And then the final thing you can do is you can play both Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then beat Red in both of them. Catch Groudon in Soul Silver and Kyogre in Heart Gold, consolidate them, and then get Rayquaza. Right? That takes forever. I'm not gonna lie, it's way faster. If you have Emerald, it's way faster to just play Emerald. I had already played Heart Gold through basically and just not beaten Red, and I decided to play Soul Silver and beat Red, and then basically consolidate and do all of this just because I wanted to see how it would work. Emerald would have been faster. I mean, you can beat the game and catch all the legends in Emerald in under 24 hours. Whenever I was doing the Gen 4 catch 'em all, that's what I did, because I had to play Emerald anyways to get the Regis for Gen 4. And it's pretty fast. For comparison, I think I ended up logging like 40 hours on Soul Silver and an extra like 5 hours on Heart Gold compared to what I had already done. So that's all you need to do for the Hoenn Legendaries. And then we get into an interesting case with the Sinnoh box legends. Basically, with the DS games, if you own them, you can plug them into the 3DS before you turn it on, and then start Dream Radar, and you'll be able to catch the box legend associated with that specific game. So you can catch all of Hoa, Lugia, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, and all with their hidden abilities too, which is interesting, if you own the games. So if you own everything, that's a pretty fast way to deal with this. Of course, you're going to have to play through the Johto game all the way anyways, so you might as well just catch Lugia and Ho-Oh in those, so it doesn't really matter. But just worth pointing out, I guess. This creates some interesting scenarios, though. So, basically, if you own all three of the games, you can Dream Radar all the box legends, and then only play through Snowpoint, because there's actually, believe it or not, there's really two Pokemon that cannot be caught in Heart Gold, Soul Silver that you have to get in Sinnoh. The first one that's absolutely necessary is Snover. The other one is Snorunt, which if you don't play Hoenn, you have to get in Sinnoh, right? So if you do what I did, I had to catch Snorunt in that area before Snowpoint City. So you basically have to play through Snowpoint City anyways, which is pretty close to when you get the Legends. But you only have to do that with Platinum, and there's a reason why if you own all of them, Platinum is going to be the best one to do. But if you only own Diamond and Pearl, for example, what you could do is you could Dream Radar the box legend of the game that you're not going to play, and then you play through the Elite Four, catch the box legend in that game, and then also catch Giratina. If you own only Diamond or only Pearl, you can't actually complete the National Dex. Like, if you only own one of the Sinnoh games, and it's not Platinum, you cannot complete the National Dex, which is really dumb. But it's a thing, I guess. And then if you own Platinum but not Diamond or Pearl, then basically you can catch all the box legends in that game. So what you do is you beat the Elite Four, and then you catch all the box legends. And then you catch Snover and Snorunt, you're done. Right? Whereas, like I said, in Diamond and Pearl, I guess you basically do the same thing. It's not, like, necessarily worse. But you have to have both of them at that point if you don't have Platinum. So, anyway, it's just worth pointing out, I guess. The interesting thing is that if you have Platinum, since you can catch all the box legends, you could actually skip Dream Radar. But there's really no point in doing that, because it would take so long to get Thunders, Tornadoes, and Landers. You'd have to actually go back and play both black and white to the point where I don't think it's anywhere near remotely worth it, even if you have like something completely against doing that game. And like I said, it makes some Pokemon also easier to get, so I would just bite the bullet and do Dream Raider. That's what I ended up doing. I'm just saying you don't technically have to do it. It is much faster to do it. For all the starters, you really ought to have one each of the Hoenn games, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, so that you can basically save scum all these starters. If you don't have any of the Hoenn games or Kanto games, then what you could do is play Heart Gold, then Soul Silver, and then reset one of them and play all the way through to the same exact point again, but that's completely ridiculous. So you really, it doesn't cost that much if you don't have them to go on Amazon and get one of the Hoenn games and get one of the Kanto games. It'd be much better than playing through Heart Gold and Soul Silver a third time. But I'm just saying, it is technically an option. I would not recommend them. And then every other Pokemon, and all the Grotto Pokemon even, are available in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So, like I said, there's like one Pokemon you have to catch in Sinnoh other than the starters and the box legends. All of those Kanto Pokemon, and Johto Pokemon, and Hoenn Pokemon, and Sinnoh Pokemon, you can catch all of those pretty easily in Johto. There are some of them that you're going to have to use the Safari Zone, but it's not that bad, actually. As long as you, like, try to deal with keeping up with the Safari Zone throughout the game, because if you don't, like, answer the calls and do the tests, then you're going to have to wait 3 in-game hours, like, between some of the calls, and it's going to be a total pain. But if basically you keep up with it, by the time you're getting to Red, I mean, you're going to have all of the objects and stuff, and it's really easy. There's good guides on Cerebi and Bulbapedia, again, for getting all of these mons. Now, there are two very specific... so there's 3 specific Pokemon that I think it is worth noting here. 2 of them, I would basically say, if you're playing Platinum, I would just recommend playing all the way through the Elite Four, getting the Poké Radar, and going to Stark Mountain. Because Torkoal and Bagon, you have to wait like hundreds of days, basically. I think it's like 30 days for Torkoal and 110 days for Bagon for the objects to mature enough, essentially, for you to be able to catch those. And that is just too long. I think there's a way to manipulate it, basically, so that you can just zoom forward in time and deal with it, but I'm pretty sure you had to play it on, like, either every 10 days or every single day, and you'd have to basically change the time 110 times and save and quit 110 times to get back on. And it's like, just no. I mean, I can't stress enough. That's just a terrible idea. So if you have the Poké Radar, though, you can get on, I believe, Route 210 North. It's like the foggy section of that one route in Platinum. You can use the Poké Radar to get back on. And in Stark Mountain, you have like a 10% chance, or I think it's a 10% chance, of getting a Torkoal with Poké Radar. So both of those, I would recommend just beat the Elite Four anyways, even though you technically probably, like, if you own all the games, you only have to go up to Snow Point. I would just go all the way anyways. I had already, of course, beaten Platinum because I have Living Dex there. But I caught basically everything. I'll list off the things that I just bred from my Living Dex, but I caught everything I could from scratch. So, if there was anything else, I would tell you if it was, like, completely horrible. The last thing is, if you don't have Platinum, you have to grind 9,999 coins in the game corner in Heart Gold or Soul Silver to get a Porygon. If you have Platinum, you can just get it as a gift. That's why it's really nice to have Platinum, because to get 9,999 coins from Volter Flip is going to take you several hours for one Pokemon, and that is just a complete pain. But, you know... Oh, there's one more thing, I guess. So, I have this in the notes here. I'm glad I noticed it. There are some Pokemon, if you only have one of Heart Gold or Soul Silver, and I would recommend only playing one if you have Emerald, because it's going to be faster. There are a few Pokemon that you're only going to be able to get through the bug catching contest. So Scyther, for example. The only way you're ever going to get that, I think you can get it through Pokeradar in Platinum, so I guess that, I think I did end up getting it that way. But you can also catch it in the bug catching contest. Like one of Weedle and Caterpie is going to be very specifically in there. I think Wurmple is specifically in the bug catching contest. I don't remember if you can catch it in Platinum or not. I think you might be able to in Eterna Forest. That might be a thing. Anyways, but it's not that bad. Bug catching contest, really not that bad. I mean, you just change the day to like Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday, and you catch the right Pokemon. It's okay. But, you know, I think it's worth pointing out. And then, right, so the Pokemon that I bred specifically from Platinum, since I didn't want to have to deal with it, I bred all of the starters and Porygon, because I had already gotten the gift of Porygon, so obviously I couldn't get that again. But everything else I caught. I just went out and caught, even if I already had it, and it would have been faster to breed it, because I wanted to do as much as I could possible from scratch. I will say breeding saved me a lot of time on the Johto starters. But yeah, I guess I'll go through in order, and I wrote this out very specifically. It should be the correct order, so that you don't have to, like, reset any games that you fully completed if you don't want to. This is going to be the fastest method to do this. So basically, you want to beat either Black 2 or White 2. It's going to be the one that's going to be your hub game. It's going to have your most level team. You're going to do the most stuff in it, right? Then you want to save scum the other Unova starter that you don't really want to use in your second playthrough. You go through an hour through the first gym, basically. It might be a little less than an hour. Then you trade that over using the sea gear that you now have. And then you want to start up the other game, the one that you just used to save scum, for example, a Tepig or something, right? You pick the third starter in that game, you play as the opposite gender as you played in the hub game, right? And you play all the way through. And you want to make sure you also pick the other fossil. It's kind of important to mention. Then you pretty much want to catch everything in Black and White 2. Or, yeah, Black and White 2, Black 2, White 2. Right? And you can use Dream Radar if you want to catch every box legend. If you own Platinum, and you have to play through Heart Gold anyways, it doesn't really save you any time. Like, if you're going to play through the Elite Four in Platinum to be able to use the Pokeradar instead of dealing with the Safari Zone, it's going to be pretty easy just to catch, you know, Giratina and Dialga and Palkia, right? And then you can just catch Lugia and Ho-Oh in the one of Heart Gold and Soul Silver that you're playing. But anyways. But you can use the Dream Radar to catch those legends if you want to. Then you want to save scum the Johto starters. Now this takes like 30 minutes a pop. These take a long time. In this particular method, you have to do this twice. And you just have to deal with it. It's annoying. I don't know why they made it take so long before you could basically send them off. It's just annoying, but it's a thing. Then you want to save scum the Sinnoh starters. Those are a lot faster. I think those take about 10 minutes, depending on what game you're using. Then you want to beat either Heart Gold or Soul Silver. It doesn't matter which one. You catch everything, and you ignore Red entirely. Right. But you have to beat all the Kanto gyms still, like I said, because there's some, like, Moltres that basically you have to beat all the Kanto gyms for. Then you save scum the Hoenn and the Kanto starters, right? And those are, like, less than 10 minutes. See, in Generation 3, they were really fast to do this, but for some reason, in generations 4 and 5, specifically the Johto and Unova games. I don't know why they made it take so long to save scum the starters. But you do all that, right? So now you should have all the starters, and then you want to beat Emerald to get all the box legends, migrate those, and this is fine because even if you haven't played Platinum yet, you'll have beaten the Elite Four in either Heart Gold or Soul Silver that you'll have beaten at this point, and you can migrate to those. And then you can migrate from there to Black 2, if that's your hub game, for example. But then you're done with Emerald, and then you want to play Platinum to Snow Point, or past the Elite Four, depending on if you want to use the Poke Radar. Yeah, and the Poke Radar is not required. I just think it makes your life easier. It doesn't really take all that much longer. It's probably like less than 5 hours to get from Snow Point to Stark Mountain, I would assume. It's really not that bad. And it's a lot more fun and Pokemon-like to do than to basically reset and move forward your day 110 times to get back on and Torkoal. Up to you. I'm just saying, it's like, I would much rather play through Platinum through the Elite Four at that point, but you catch everything else in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you put it all in Black 2 and White 2, and then basically you breed and train if you want a Living Dex. I mean, you really only have to train pretty much everything if you don't want a Living Dex, but if you want a Living Dex, you're gonna have to breed stuff a bunch, which is gonna add on a bunch of time. So in the end, I think this was about 200 in-game hours to do all of this. It took me about a month, because I was basically doing this the entire time, for that entire month, pretty much. That's about the same amount of time it took me to do Gen 4. It is more Pokemon, though, so I think it plays better. Like, on a Pokemon-by-Pokemon basis, it's easier, but it takes just as long, because there's more of them. So, I don't know. I'm not sure which one I liked better. Gen 5 plays faster. I mean, the animations in 4 are really slow. I mean, that's another thing you can consider. If you wanted to cut down the time, you could turn animations off. I like to play with animations, so I left them on. But yeah, I played Soul Silver instead of Emerald, and I had already played Heart Gold, and I'm not factoring that into the total amount of time. I think maybe my time was probably closer to 170 hours if you actually average everything. But anyways, it would have been close to 200 hours if I had, say, not played Soul Silver and played Emerald instead to get the Hoenn Legends. So I think you can do this in 200 hours. It's definitely possible. It's probably a pretty good estimate. But take it with a large grain of salt. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty fun. I'm not sure what I want to start Gen 6, but I do plan to do that at some point. So this clearly didn't wear me out from making Living Dexes. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I hope I didn't scare everybody. It's like, once you get into the National Dex stuff, it sounds really daunting. Really isn't that bad. You basically have to play the same amount of games as you would have to play for Gen 4. It's like, I think with Gen 4 you have to play like Diamond and Pearl halfway or something. And this time you just, instead of playing 2 games halfway, you have to play another game to completion or something like that. I think it's like 5 total games or something like that. Anyways. But yeah. I don't know. I thought it was fun. I think people should get this a shot, and this recording is ridiculously long. I might split this up. But, good luck to anybody who wants to try. And I hope this was somewhat informative, so that you're not completely in the dark and you don't have to spend hours upon hours trying to detail out exactly what order I was going to do things in and what games I was going to play through. It's good. But anyways, see you guys. I should end this recording before it's about to hit 1 hour, so we'll be done.